They called it a suicide run, not because the tactic was reckless, but because in 1943, it looked impossible. Today we're inside the cockpit as a handful of B-25 Mitchell crews do the unthinkable at wavetop height. This is banned suicide run. 9 B-25s obliterate a convoy in 15 minutes. Stay with me, because the hardest choices, the boldest flying, and the result that rewired Pacific strategy all arrive in the final act. Picture New Guinea, early 1943. The struggle for the island isn't background noise. It's the supply valve for the entire theater. Japan's lifeline runs across the Bismarck Sea, from Rabaul to La. When a convoy lifts anchor at Rabaul with troop transports under destroyer escort, it isn't just another movement on a chart. It's thousands of men, weapons, and ammunition aimed straight at the fighting around La. Allied codebreakers and reconnaissance pick up the sailing. The question isn't whether to strike, it's how. Because for months, how has been failing. High-altitude bombing scatters neat craters into empty ocean while ships turn away in time. The math is cruel. Long time of fall, fast targets, tiny aim points. The 5th Air Force needs a new angle. Literally, the answer forms on a reef near Port Moresby, where a beached hulk becomes a classroom. Crews rehearse a radical sequence. Come in low, very low, arm a delayed action fuse, release close, and let the bomb skip across the surface into the hull. Add forward firing. 50 caliber guns to smash the decks on the way in. And you have a tool built for one moment. The final seconds when a ship can't jink clear. That's the plan for the Bismarck Sea. A layered attack. Heavy bombers up high to break formations and force hard turns. Royal Australian Air Force Beaufighters thundering in at mast height to rake decks and make gunners duck. Then the B-25s, leveled at sea spray altitude for the skip bombing strike. Fighter cover weaves above, ready to keep enemy aircraft busy. On paper it's precise. In the air it will be unforgiving. Dawn light spreads over Port Moresby. Ground crews move with practiced speed, arming bombs with delay fuses, checking the new forward guns fitted for this very job. Pilots talk in short phrases. Navigators fold and refold maps marked with bearings to the Bismarck Sea. No one needs a pep talk. Only the right headings, the right altitudes, and the discipline to hold steady when instinct screams to climb. The brief is simple and exacting. Low approach, controlled fire. To suppress, single clean release, and no second passes unless absolutely necessary. Engines turn. The Mitchells roll. Over open water the formation settles into a low, fast groove. At this height the ocean isn't scenery. It's a surface racing past. There's no radio chatter, just quiet checks and the occasional call of airspeed and altitude. In the distance, smoke threads into the sky. Ships, columns of transports, destroyers fanned on the flanks. Everyone in the cockpit feels the same pull. The target is real now. Up high, the first blows land. Bomb bay doors open on heavy aircraft. Splashes and evasive turns ripple down through the convoy. It's working. Formations break, spacing widens. That's when the Beaufighters streak in at mast height. Guns hammering, sending defenders to the deck. The lane opens for the Mitchells, but open is a generous word. What's ahead is a narrow, fast-closing corridor bordered by metal and fire. The B-25s drop to the number they've practiced. Sea level isn't a figure of speech. Whitecaps flick and vanish beneath the nose. Gunners call bearings. Pilots hold the line. The forward guns begin to speak. Short, aimed bursts. Walking tracers across bridge windows and gun tubs. This isn't bravado. It's survival. Suppress. Close. Release. Inside one cockpit, the bomb release hand is steady. The bombardier watches the ship fill the screen of his mind. Bow wave, bridge, masts. The pale strip where hull meets water. The bomb is live. The fuse is counting on. Faith and timing. The pilot holds just long enough. Then presses. The Mitchell lurches lighter. A dull shape skips bright over gray. Once, twice. Then disappears against the side where steel gives way to force. If you're watching at home, this is where our title begins to make sense. But not yet. Not fully. We haven't earned the last 15 minutes. First, we need the build. Why this tactic turns a long, losing equation into a short, decisive one. How training on a rusted wreck turned into coordination over a real convoy, and what it costs to keep the nose level when every gun on a ship is looking at you. So here's the promise. By the end, you'll see why crews called it a suicide run, how a small formation of B-25s helped flip a campaign at sea, and why a handful of minutes could change months of fighting on land. And I'm going to ask you to weigh in, because the choices made at sea level that day still spark debate. Tactics, ethics, and what acceptable risk means when the stakes are a whole theater's supply line. Before we dive into the strike itself, a quick primer, because understanding the mechanics makes the next moments clearer. Skip bombing is not a lucky bounce. It demands a low approach, measured in feet, not hundreds, high enough to stay above the surface's bite, low enough to keep the target in a flat plane. The fuse is set to delay, so detonation happens inside the ship, or just below the waterline, where damage multiplies. Forward guns aren't decoration. They force defenders to think about self-preservation instead of perfect aim. It's choreography under fire, and every step is necessary. The Mitchell is the right airframe at the right time. Tough, stable, plenty of room for the guns that turn it from medium bomber into low-level striker. It isn't the only aircraft in the show. Heavy bombers and Beaufighters earn their credit, but the B-25's moment is this one. A clean, controlled run that ends where steel meets water. Back to the sea, the Convoy is fully awake now. Columns are broken, but the ships still bristle with weapons. Splashes rake the approach lanes. Spray and shrapnel mingle in the air. And yet, through that, you can see the calm in a bomber cockpit when everything is lined up. The horizon steady, the target fixed, the timing exact. That feeling, the vanish of doubt in a practiced motion, is what training was for. We are seconds from contact. The next choices determine whether the bomb slides too low and buries in the sea, skips too high and sails long, or strikes where it must. The formation fans to their assigned targets. No waste, no double up unless the first pass leaves a ship clearly moving. Each crew gets one chance at decisive effect. That's not drama, it's logistics. There are more ships than bombs if anyone hesitates. As we cross that threshold, I want to hear from you in the comments. Would you have supported this kind of low-level tactic if you'd been in the planning tent? Or would you have pushed to keep things higher, safer, and slower to pay off? No right answers, only trade-offs, and we'll see how those trade-offs play out in the next phase. Hold your breath. The Mitchells are in range, triggers pressed, decks raked, bomb release lights armed. One clean motion, then climb. The clock we've been pointing to is about to start. Because when the first bombs skip true, the tone of the battle changes. Fast, and the story behind 9B-25s. 15 minutes isn't a catchphrase. It's the compressed, coordinated moment when training, timing, and courage meet. That moment is next. If you're still with me, you're the kind of viewer who doesn't blink when the altimeter reads 2 digits. Stay. What happens now is the reason the Convoy never reaches LA, and why air power over open water will never be planned the same way again. The first impacts rewrite the sound of the sea. A shape skips across the surface and vanishes into steel. A beat. Later the hull lifts, then buckles, and the air is a low, heavy thump in the pilot's chest. Decks vanish behind spray and smoke. What looked like a simple line on a chart becomes a confusion of wakes and turning circles, and the low-level plan, conceived on a drawing board and polished over a beach target, suddenly proves itself against ships that are fighting back. Here's why it works. High above, heavy bombers force hard rudder and throttle, breaking the neat geometry of columns and intervals. At mast height, Australian Beaufighters chew along the decks, not to sink ships, but to make every gunner a survivor first and a marksman second. And then the B-25s arrive in that thin slice of air where ocean and steel meet. The delayed fuse is the quiet partner in the cockpit. Release close, let the bomb ride the surface, and spend its force inside the hull where water pressure multiplies the damage from a pilot's seat. There's nothing romantic about it. Its numbers turned into muscle memory. Hold the line. Don't yank. Keep the horizon steady. The forward firing 50s aren't bravado. They're a moving curtain against gun positions and bridge windows. Suppress to survive is the rule. In those last seconds, the ship isn't a ship. It's a series of rectangles. Bow, bridge, mast, waterline. And one of them is the place the bomb has to reach. Across the Convoy, the same scene plays out with tiny variations. One crew's release is textbook and the detonation blooms just under the waterline. Another's is a hair early and the weapon skips long. They climb away empty, hating the instinct to live that stole a split second from the plan. A third holds half a heartbeat more and threads the margin between too soon and too late. The effect is cumulative. A transport settles, stern heavy. Another stops dead in the water, smoke climbing from midships. A destroyer that turned to meet the threat suddenly has its aft gun silent because the deck they sit on is no longer a deck, but a torn silhouette. Within minutes, the convoy shape is gone. Turn circles overlap. Escorts split attention between picking up survivors and throwing fire across low approaches. The B-25s do not linger. One pass is doctrine and necessity. A second circle at wave-top height gifts defenders time they don't deserve. The formation doesn't swarm. It fans. Each aircraft responsible for a different target. Each crew trusting the others to make their run count. Above this, another battle threads in and out of. Clouds. Fighters hunt fighters. Contrails shred and reform. The B-25s feel it as sudden slashes of cannon fire that appear and vanish at the edges of vision, as warning calls and clipped voices, as a jolt of turbulence that might be wake or blast. The layered plan holds because each layer keeps its promise for just long enough. Heavies to disrupt, Beaufighters to suppress, Mitchells to deliver, escorts to pull enemy fighters higher or wider. And still, there are costs. A low-level strike is unforgiving. A single burst can nick a line that feeds an engine. A moment's fix on a crossing wake can draw a pilot off the pitiless strait that skip bombing demands. When a crew doesn't come back on the radio, the cockpit stays quiet. There is work left to do and seconds left to do it. If you've ever wondered whether one tactical shift can change a whole campaign, keep watching. The proof won't be in a single explosion. It will be in what happens over the rest of the day and the days that follow. How many ships are left moving? How many men reach their destination with their equipment intact? And whether anyone is willing to sail this route again under the eye of land-based air. This is the heart of our title. Banned Suicide Run wasn't a slogan. It was the label people gave to a method that had to be proven in combat. The Obliterate a convoy part isn't theater. It's a measure of what skip bombing and mast-height strafing can do when they're coordinated with altitude, timing, and discipline. And the minutes aren't a countdown for drama. They're the compressed window in which ships either keep moving or begin to die. Tell me in the comments. Would you have trusted the low-level plan if you were at the map table before takeoff? Or would you have argued for altitude and patience? What would you ask one of these crews if you could sit across from them after they landed? We're not done. The convoy is damaged, but not finished. Enemy fighters reappear where the sky is thin. Fuel gauges and ammunition counters are not abstractions anymore. The next choices: when to turn, what to re-attack, when to climb out, will decide whether the strike remains a success or turns into a trade the Allies can't afford. Stay with me. The aftermath of the first passes is about to collide with the counterpunch, and the answer to whether this tactic changes more than a single day is waiting just ahead. The counterpunch arrives from above. Fighters drop from broken cloud like glints of light, turned hard and fast, and every cockpit below feels the sky tighten. The escorts climb to meet them, streaks of motion drawn across a high canvas, while the Mitchells stay married to the surface where their mission lives. Down low, nobody looks up for long. At sea level, a glance costs distance. Distance is survival. One bomber takes hits and keeps flying a fraction lighter. Another pulls away, trailing a thread that disappears in the glare. Crew focused on numbers that keep the airplane honest. Power, temperature, fuel. A third rolls into its lane with the kind of steadiness that only comes from hours of practice over a beached wreck and empty water. The rhythm holds. Suppress, release, climb. Suppress, release, climb. Not heroic, just exact. Now the convoy's behavior changes. The clean geometry of two columns is gone. Transports turn wide and uneven, some losing way, others trying to edge toward distant coastline. Escorts split attention between throwing fire, guarding gaps, and shepherding the ships that can still answer a helm. Smoke doesn't tell truth about fate. Some plumes mean casualties without mortal damage. Others mean water pouring through compartments. But what matters to the strike is momentum. And momentum is failing across the formation. Up high, heavy bombers make another pass. Not because they expect pinpoint hits from altitude, but because every evasive turn they force robs the convoy of speed and alignment. Along the surface, Beaufighters carve one more line of tracers to keep heads down while the last Mitchells complete their single runs. This is what a layered plan looks like when it works. Each part buys the next part seconds, and those seconds add up to ships that can't keep station. There are losses, a crew that made a perfect approach is missing from the tally on the way out. Another calls damage control procedures in clipped voices and flies the checklist like a lifeline. The formation doesn't fold. It stretches, each pilot choosing a clean egress path rather than crowding into a narrow corridor that once held a convoy and now holds spray and debris. No looping victory passes, no extra turns for the camera that isn't there. Just the discipline to leave as cleanly as they arrived. If you've ever flown low over water, even in imagination, you know the thunder is different down here. After the last release, the air feels thicker, the ocean wider, and the silence inside a headset suddenly loud. That's when crews notice the details. A warning lamp that wasn't there before, a smear of oil on a panel, a gun position silent because its ammunition belts are spent. They don't talk about results yet. Results will come from photographs and ships that don't arrive where they were supposed to arrive. For now, it's headings home and the kind of quiet that isn't relief so much as focus redirected. Behind them, the sea keeps score in wakes that drift and stop, in ships that list and settle, in escorts that choose between rescue and defense. Ahead of them lies a runway, a debrief, and a decision about what to launch next. Because this isn't a single swing and done. It's a sequence over hours and, if needed, days. Reconnaissance will look down through breaks in the weather. If a transport beaches to save itself, it becomes a fixed point for the next strike. If an escort limps, it becomes a line on a chart with a time attached. Hold that thought, because it's central to our title. The 15 minutes is the shock that breaks a convoy. The full outcome comes from staying on the problem, returning when the light changes, using altitude and angle the way a mechanic uses tools, and refusing to give an enemy back the coherence your first attack took away. Tell me what you think in the comments. Is this the best example of air power forcing a naval decision without a fleet in sight? Or do you point to a different moment in the Pacific where aircraft alone changed the map? We're not at the finish yet. The story has one more gear: confirmation, consequence, and what commanders decide after they've read the photos and counted the hulls that didn't make it. Stay with me. The next chapter is where statistics harden into strategy, and where a tactic once labeled a suicide run becomes doctrine. Reconnaissance brings the verdict. Hours after the strike, cameras look down through gaps in weather and see the story the crews felt but couldn't confirm. Transports listing or stopped, escorts circling, smoke curled into a map you can read from 15,000 feet. Back at base, photographs spread across a table, lines on charts become facts. A convoy that sailed to reinforce a front in New Guinea will not arrive as planned. Debrief rooms are quiet places. Crews walk what they did step by step: approach, release, egress, while intelligence officers thread individual memories into a single picture. You don't need adjectives when the photos show hulls settling and wakes that end mid-ocean. What matters is simple and strategic. How many ships are still moving under their own power? How many are out of the fight? And which way the survivors are turning now? Command decisions follow quickly. If a transport beaches to avoid sinking, it becomes a fixed target for the next strike. If escorts gather survivors, they are not guarding lanes. If ships attempt to run the coastline, they do it damaged and watched. The day's work isn't the end. It's the break in momentum that lets the next blows land with certainty. When the light shifts toward evening, another mission goes out. Same layers, same discipline, same refusal to give a damaged convoy time to become an organized one again. This is where banned suicide run 9 B-25s obliterate a convoy in 15 minutes, stops being a provocation and turns into a lesson. The 15 minutes is the hinge, the moment when low-level attacks, fused with suppression and altitude deconfliction, convert movement into loss. But the outcome crystallizes because air power stays on the problem. Repeat reconnaissance, timed returns, and no allowance for a night's repair to undo a day's damage. You don't erase a convoy in a single sweep. You break it and then keep it broken. On the ground, the cost is counted with the same care. Aircraft that didn't return are marked absent by empty spaces on the line, damage that got a crew. Home is logged and patched. There's pride in a plan proven under fire and sobriety in the fact that proving it demanded flying where the margin is measured in feet. No headlines in the debrief, just clarity. The low-level method, practiced over a beached hulk and refined in briefings, delivered the effect it was built to deliver. From the wider map's point of view, consequences arrive quickly. When a route under the reach of land-based air turns into a place where convoys lose ships faster than they can escort them, planning changes. You see it in the next orders. Fewer daylight sailings in range of New Guinea, tighter escorts, altered routes, and a recognition that formations built for open ocean maneuver are vulnerable when a strike compresses the fight down to the waterline. Tactically, the lesson spreads. Skip bombing isn't a rumor anymore. It's syllabus. Crews who trained on a rusted target now teach others with photographs and procedures to match. Approach low, time the release. Set the fuse to spend force inside the hull. Pair it with mast-height strafing to suppress, and with high-level pressure to keep ships turning at the wrong moments. It's not a single aircraft story. It's a layered method tuned to the way ships actually move and fight. The airframes evolve with the mission. Medium bombers that once lived at comfortable altitudes are reworked as strafers, more forward-firing guns. Armor where crews sit and engines spin. Sightlines optimized for a horizon that lives close to the nose. None of this makes the job safe. It makes it survivable at the moment when the release has to be perfect and the climb out has to be clean. Across the theater, partners adapt the idea to their own tools. Where the coastline funnels ships into straits or harbors, low-level methods prove especially harsh on vessels that can't jink wide. Where open ocean and fighter cover give defenders room, strikes rely more on timing, surprise, and the high-low weave that forces attention in two places at once. What began as a field expedient answer to poor hit rates becomes a doctrine taught, briefed, and expected. If you're watching and weighing the balance, risk versus payoff, this is the place to leave your mark in the comments. Does a tactic earn its place when it saves time on the ground by taking risk in the air? Or should commanders have looked for other levers, more submarines, more mines, heavier high-altitude coverage, to force the same outcome? These are not abstract questions. They're the arguments that shaped how air and sea met in 1943. Hold that thought for the final act. Because the most important change is not the loss column from one fight. It's the message that lands in planning rooms on both sides. For the Allies, train more crews, standardize the method, and time the layers. For Japan, reconsider where and how to move troops within range of airfields that can launch this kind of strike. The map of New Guinea doesn't change on paper, but the way ships move across it does. We're almost there. One last step remains. Turning confirmation into consequence. How many ships didn't reach LA? How convoy doctrine shifted? And why this short, violent window at sea level became a reference point for the rest of the Pacific campaign. And then we'll close with the question I want you to answer. After seeing the whole picture, is Suicide Run a fair name? Or does innovation under fire deserve a different label? Confirmation becomes consequence. Across the Bismarck Sea, the photographs translate shock into strategy. 8 transports gone, for destroyers lost, the rest scattered or withdrawing, and the route to La abruptly closed. That is what banned Suicide Run. 9 B-25s obliterate a convoy in 15 minutes really means. The decisive break is fast, but the outcome echoes through days, plans, and policy. Command reacts the only way that matters in a logistics war. By tempo, damaged vessels that beach to survive are marked for the next wave. Ships still moving under strain are shadowed. Reconnaissance slots are reserved like scarce fuel. The strike package becomes a rhythm. Altitude to disrupt, mast height to suppress, low level to finish. Repeated just long enough to remove doubt. In the debriefs, nobody boasts. They note altitudes, ranges, fusing, gun runs, and the way a convoy's will to move drains when the first minutes go against it. From this point forward, skip bombing isn't an experiment. It's a syllabus line. Crews are taught that the ocean isn't an obstacle. It's part of the aiming solution. They learn that forward-firing guns aren't for spectacle. They're for decision-making under fire, turning marksmen into men taking cover. They practice cadence. Hold the horizon steady, release once, climb away clean, and they learn the discipline that separates a hard-won success from unnecessary loss. No second passes unless a commander directs and conditions make it sane, the enemy reads. The same lesson from the other side of the table. Long daylight convoys within range of Allied airfields become rare. Routes shift, timings slide toward darkness, defensive armament increases, and air cover plans are rewritten. Even so, the map has changed. Where land-based air can reach, a thin layer of air at sea level now dominates the fate of ships built for blue water. That is a quiet revolution, and it begins here. The machines evolve with the method. Medium bombers gain more forward guns, armor where it counts, and small improvements that only matter at 40 to 50 feet. Clearer sight lines, habits for crews that share cockpits by muscle memory. None of it turns danger into safety. It simply moves the needle from unlikely to demanding but repeatable. And that difference is what commanders need when they're deciding where to risk men and fuel across the theater. Partners apply the template to their own geography, in harbors and straits, where maneuver is limited, low level. Attack becomes especially punishing. In open ocean, success depends on surprise, timing, and the layered pressure that forces defenders to split attention. You can see doctrine forming in real time. The high/low weave, the mast-height strafing, the delayed fuse release. Each piece validated by results, not rhetoric. This is the moment to ask you to weigh in. When is risk in the air justified by time saved on the ground? Would you have supported expanding low-level tactics after this battle, or pushed for different tools, submarines, mines, or more distant blockade, to strangle supply? Tell me in the comments which lever you would have pulled, and why. Back to our title, and the promise it makes. Banned suicide run isn't bravado. It's the label pinned on a tactic before its value was proven. Obliterate a convoy in 15 minutes isn't a flourish. It's the hinge that flips a campaign day from reinforcement to denial. The last thing we need to do is close the loop. Turn ships sunk into strategic effect. Trace how commanders on both sides adjust, and explain why air power at wavetop height becomes a reference point for the rest of the Pacific War. Stay with me for the final act. We'll bring the numbers into focus, connect them to the ground fight they were meant to shape, and ask one last question about courage, innovation, and the names we give to tactics that begin as desperation and end as doctrine. Then I'll give you a clear way to support this kind of deep dive history so more people see it, remember it, and argue about it with the respect it deserves.